It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
the Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. The interweb's first and only podcast. I'm Jared.
My name's Matt.
And I'm Mike.
And gentlemen, this week, we got a lot to talk about. I mean,
a lot?
Boy. We're gonna be introducing a new segment to the show this week. We're going to be calling it the Retroactive Rewind Review. And for our inaugural review, we're going to be talking about...
Don't tell them.
What?
Don't tell them what the movie is.
They've probably read the description on their podcatcher. They probably know what's coming. They've seen pictures by now.
Maybe we'll just explain to them what the segment's about.
Guys, we had the misfortune this week...
Something that we thought would be fun turned horribly wrong.
Nobody would have guessed. No one would have seen this coming.
Something we've wanted to do on the show for a while is to take it and look back and review old sci-fi movies and fantasy films and things like that. And, kind of look at them with a lens from the 25th century. And I tell you what, I wish I was in the 45th century looking way, way back on this thing. We're talking about...
None of us have seen this one before.
I actually had seen it before.
You've seen this one before?
Yes.
Well, shame on you.
But I
for letting us watch this thing.
I had almost... No, to be fair, I seriously had almost completely forgotten it.
Oh, I can't imagine how.
with good reason. So Mike watched this about 20 years ago, and I don't remember who suggested we actually review this thing. I'm going to blame Mike.
Well, it's something we had kind of talked about in the past, and when the topic idea came up, Matt gave us a list to choose from, and it was on the list. And then I said, well, let's just do that one.
Well, it's got to be Matt's fault then if he's the one who... Guys, we're talking about 1974's Sean Connery tour de force, Zardoz.
Zardoz.
And when I tell you that this was an interesting experience, I'm lying. It was, in fact, painful and awful. And I'm pretty sure Mike and Matt are with me on that.
I really had no idea what I was getting into, and it was nothing of what any of my preconceptions were at all.
Listen,
it was something completely different.
I made the wise choice of watching this in the middle of the afternoon. Matt and Mike watched it at night, both struggling to remain conscious.
It was a fight. I'm not lying. It was a real fight.
However, unfortunately, watching it in the middle of the afternoon, I really had no excuse. I just had to sit there and stare blankly at the screen. I couldn't even fall asleep.
And, you had to marinate in that movie afterwards,
yes,
so you had to think about it all day.
I did. And I may not have dreamed about it last night. But I tell you, we're going to get into that more later. But this is something different on the show. If you haven't seen Zardoz, count yourself fortunate. And if you have, then maybe you'll want to hear what we have to say about it.
Well, guys, I know we're in no rush to get to that segment, so why don't we take them into some random space first?
Remember, access memory.
Well, there's a new movie out right now. And I don't know if you've heard, but there's a lot of hubbubaloo about it.
Hubbubaloo?
Apparently, there's a concern that people are going to see this movie and turn into murderers. The Joker. Have you not seen the press about this thing?
Yeah, I saw it. It's all ridiculous.
It's like they're like stationing police at the theaters for
They
this
had
thing.
to stop their press junket because they thought it was going to incite violence. And
I mean, okay, whatever. Anyway, so what that made me think of is the other Jokers of the past, and I thought maybe we could just do a quick reflection on the best Jokers and why we like them so much and why they were so endearing to us.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to send out a tweet to the National Guard and let them know we're doing this.
You better.
So,
If you feel an impulse to kill someone while listening to this, please don't.
no, that would have been during Zardoz.
That's well, it's almost like,
that
you
might
know,
have been a self-inflicted wound at that point.
won't even be conscious to do anything. So I think the Joker is undoubtedly one of the best villains of all time. I think he's a great counter to Batman, but he's just a really great villain. He's fun to watch, but he's also kind of terrifying. I never had a fear of clowns like people do, but I know that's an aspect of it. So I'm going to start off by just talking about the very first Joker I was exposed to, and I think is still one of my favorites, and that's Cesar Romero Joker from the Batman TV series. Say what you will about the camp of the show. I love the show. I'm not dissing on the show at all. I love the show. But that Joker, Cesar Romero, I mean, he was just amazing. I mean, that guy must have been exhausted when he was done playing that role.
Yeah.
He had so much energy, and he was just so fun to watch. I mean, he was just
cackling all the time and jumping around.
You know, he'd do the hoo hoo hoo. You know, he'd do all the
Yes.
People of Gotham City, the moment you have all been waiting for.
weird
One
sounds.
thing he didn't do was shave his mustache.
I know, but who
I
cares?
And
It's
to be
worth
honest,
it.
I didn't even pick up on that.
Neither did I. You're an
Until I
adult.
read it. I read it in a Starlog magazine of all places that he didn't shave his mustache.
I'd finally noticed it, I think, on like one of the second or third viewings of the Batman movie, where I was like, hey, wait a minute. Is there a mustache there?
It's one of those things you don't really notice at first, but when you know about it, you can't never
Yeah, you can't unsee it.
unsee
But it also makes it all that much more awesome, I think.
Sure.
But you know what's great about the campiness of that show is that everybody in that show they were always that character. It's not that they ever really broke character. So the Joker in that world was always the Joker. He never had like a downtime.
An origin story.
Yeah, there was no like he was never like, a person. He was always the Joker. The Penguin was always the Penguin. So you kind of bought it. You never really you just bought into the camp. It was fun.
No,
that
it
was the
worked
first. That was one of the first
perfectly.
shows I remember as a kid watching. My brother and I. We talked about this before in one of our earlier episodes. That every day we'd come home from school and I'd put on my blue snow mittens and he'd put on his red snow mittens because he'd always had to be Robin because I was Batman. And we'd watch that show, and that's one of the like afternoon rituals we do as like a 4-year-old kid. It was great. But he was great. What a great Joker.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I when I hear people kind of diss on the TV series, it's sort of like when people diss on Star Trek 3. You're like, man, you're dumb.
It was a huge show. I mean, I don't know anybody who didn't like Batman.
No, I mean, but there's people who kind of feel like they outgrown it. I know. I remember when I first saw it. When I saw it for the first time, since I had been a kid, it was like right before or right after the Keaton movie came out, and Nick at Night started running the episodes.
Batman. Yeah.
And I was horrified when I watched it because, I mean, when I was a kid, that was as serious as any episode of Law and Order. I mean, it was the real deal. And then to watch it as an adult, I was like, "What is?" It was like your childhood was like a lie. But then you grow up, out of your, teenage years, and you become like a reasonable adult, and you watch it, and you're like, it's the most brilliant thing you've ever seen.
Oh,
but
it is so smart. I mean, it is way more clever, I think, than people think. I mean,
it knows exactly what it's doing.
I got to tell you my favorite line from the show. One of them, Batman walks into a nightclub, where there's a bar and people dancing, and the bartender's like, or the maitre d's like, Batman, can I take your cape, please? And he's like, no, thank you. I'll just stand at the bar. I don't wish to attract attention to myself.
Anything I can do for you, sir? Check your tape?
Ringside table, Batman?
Just looking, thanks. I'll stand at the bar. I shouldn't wish to attract attention.
Which is so ridiculous, but very funny.
Anyway, I don't want to get too off track, but that Joker, Cesar Romero, top notch.
Yeah,
Joker.
he was a good baseline as a Joker for me.
And he was a comic book character. Like, he was like a comic book character come to life.
Yeah, that's what that show was.
And of course, there is the unforgettable Jack Nicholson.
Yes.
Which I would say of the grouping is, and this is not to diss on Mr. Nicholson. If you're listening, I'm sure he's one of our loyal listeners. He's probably my least favorite of the newer Jokers, and I'm not counting. We're not even going to talk about Jared Leto. He's not even going to be in the mix. But anyway, that was like really exciting because that was like the first Batman movie that was going to be like serious. It wasn't going to be played for laughs.
Maybe because I was like a young teenager when that came out, I got a real special place in my heart for that movie. And
heck yeah.
And Jack Nicholson as the Joker in that movie was amazing. I mean, it was such a tour de force of performance from him. It was just something that, I mean, if you were a Jack Nicholson fan and you watched his work leading up to that, and this was a huge departure as far as acting goes for him, and he just went off the rails and did a great job. He did a great job.
My favorite scene with him is when he is talking to the guy he's just cooked with his hand buzzer, and he's making those faces. Like the guy's saying stuff that's like
he's talking to him,
like it's startling him.
Yeah.
Your pals, they're not bad people. Maybe we ought to give them a couple of days to think it over. Grease them now. Okay. You are a vicious bastard. We're telling it. I'm glad you're dead. I'm glad you're dead.
It was some mob boss, but he was just the way he's talking. He's like doing his faces.
He's like, what? What? Yeah. And I think Jack Nicholson, he had some Cesar Romero in his performance, but he had a much darker, more sinister side to him as well. Like, you never saw Cesar Romero like gun people down. And,
well, no, obviously not.
And, so I think he could turn on the Cesar Romero and then turned ugly fast.
But I think, to be honest with you, though, I think the Joker is better served without an origin story, to be honest with you. I think, like the way they did him in the Nolan movies, you don't know where this guy's coming from. Mm-hmm. He's just nuts.
I think it worked for the Burton movie. Tim Burton's movie.
I don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing on the Burton movie at all. Yeah. I like it, and at the time it was just phenomenal.
You know what it was? It was a fun movie. It was fun to watch, and it was fun to watch Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Oh yeah, especially at the end in the cathedral when Batman's beating the crap out of him, and he puts the glasses on. Would you hear a guy with glasses?
Killed my parents. What? Oh. What are you talking about? I made you. You made me first. Hey, bad brain. I mean, I was a kid when I killed your parents. I mean, I say I made you. You gotta say you made me. And how childish can you get, huh? You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you? Huh?
and then Batman punches him right in the face.
That's what I'm talking about. And that, I mean, Caesar was always over the top. But Jack Nicholson, you know, to Jared's point, he brought a darker side into the Joker, but you always had fun watching him. And that's part of the great part about that movie that's different than the other movies is that you had fun with that Joker. So I think he was a great Joker. I think Caesar was great in his right, and I think Jack Nicholson was equally good in his own right in playing that role because they were so different in how they were portrayed.
And one more thing I'd like to add is on the documentary for Batman, they interviewed Jack Nicholson, and he talks about what a charge he still gets when he's out in public and some parents will come up with their little kid and they'll go, hey, that's the Joker. And the kid's face would brighten up and he like, you could tell that he just really still loved that experience.
I remember those DVDs were released in like the mid 2000s. So it was fair, you know, like probably 10, 15 years ago, but he sort of dropped out of public life. So but I don't think he holds a candle to Mr. Freeze in the fourth film in the No, I'm just
Schumacher
kidding.
movie.
That's right. No, okay, we're not talking about Mr. Freeze. Learn it well. It's the chilling sound of your dome. All right, we're done with that.
All right.
So we didn't have the Joker on screen again until The Dark Knight Rises, right? Or
The Dark Knight.
Oh, The Dark Knight, yeah.
Yes.
Was that 2008?
Yep. 2008.
Sounds right. Just let me say, when I heard that Heath Ledger had been cast to play the Joker, I thought that was the biggest, dumbest thing I'd ever heard in my life.
I think a lot of people shared that opinion.
And I would like to say, was I ever wrong? Because Heath Ledger, man.
Yeah, he brought it. He certainly did. I mean his entrance where he puts the pencil through the guy's eyeball.
Oh, that was amazing.
And it's
and the way it's like that same kind of fun, like where he goes, ta-da!
He goes, and it's gone.
When he's talking to those gangsters, and he's just completely like just degrading them right there in front of. I mean, what happened? Did your balls fall off?
Let's wind the clocks back a year. These cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you. I mean, what happened? Did your balls drop off?
Yeah.
His performance is not debated. He is that role was amazing for him.
Yeah. There are times watching that movie where you see, I mean, you know when you're watching a movie if like there's like something special on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like you know this is going to be huge and big. And that's the way I felt watching him in The Dark Knight. Mm-hmm. Like this is crazy. Like he completely stole the movie. Completely.
I think too, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of torn for place for the best comic book movie ever made. And it kind of goes back and forth between Superman the movie and The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight is one of those movies I would call perfect. Like flawless, just perfect all the way through.
It's really awesome. And he is probably 95% of that. I mean, of course, everything else is very well done and well put together. But to your earlier point, yeah, he's a guy. In the movie, he switched up his origin story every time he told it to somebody.
I love that. I love that so much. Because it threw you off. Because the first time you hear it, you're like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, like
and then
my
he tells
father was a fiend.
I love when he grabs what's her face and he's like, look at me.
Look at me.
Well, hello, beautiful. You must be Harvey's squeeze.
And you are beautiful.
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them? Come here. Hey. Look at me. So I had a wife, beautiful, like you, who tells me I worry too much, who tells me I ought to smile more, who gambles and gets in deep with the sharks. Hey. One day they carve her face. We have no money for surgeries. She can't take it. I just want to see her smile again. I just want her to know that I don't care about the scars. So, I stick a razor in my mouth and do this to myself. And you know what? She can't stand the sight of me. She leaves. Now I see the funny side. Now I'm always smiling. A little fight in you. I like that. And you're gonna love me.
You know, it always made me laugh in that scene when he first told his story, and everyone's in the room watching this happen, and and of course Batman's like, "Then you're gonna love me." He's standing in the middle of the room, right behind her the whole time.
It's a great moment, but when you go back and think
all
about
these people are standing there around in a circle, and he's in the circle.
Did he like tiptoe up behind
How did
the
he get
Joker?
past the guys in the tuxedos the whole time? But no, that's a great movie. But he was an amazing performance as the Joker. Totally dark. To your point, Mike, the changing origin story really worked well for that movie. He was a complete enigma. He was a complete mystery, and he was the chaotic agent.
Chaos. He was chaos.
He was the agent of chaos that they wanted him to be, and it was an amazing performance.
You know, I hated it at first, but now the makeup.
Did you hate it?
I hated it at first just because it didn't look like the Joker. You know what I mean? Because you're used to the whole face being pale. But to have like this makeup that maybe he had put on and has never ever been taken off, and it's slowly being eroded away by whatever. And now I think it's I love it now. Yeah. But when I first saw it, I was like, wow, I don't know about that. But once again, I was an idiot.
It was amazing. Great casting, great movie, great writing, great directing. One of my favorite trilogies of all time, and certainly as far as that trilogy goes, the best movie of that trilogy.
Oh, no doubt. Okay, so I think one more is worth an honorable mention.
Let me preface by saying,
okay,
when I saw the trailer for the movie you're about to mention, you're probably going to mention the cartoon Joker, aren't you?
I am.
Okay,
pause on that. Do you want me to? Okay,
pause on that.
Paused.
When I saw the trailer for Suicide Squad,
which, by the way, I had a friend who was an editor on that movie. I just want to throw that out there.
I actually really liked the trailer a lot. I got really psyched for that movie, and at first I was very, I felt almost like, don't touch the Joker. It's still too close to the Heath Ledger Joker, and you don't need to take this story right now. You don't need to add him in. But I saw the trailer, and I got to be honest, in the trailer, what they added with Jared Leto, I thought was phenomenal. And I thought, you know what? Maybe they've got something here. And then I saw that turd of a movie. And I have to say, the Joker wasn't even the problem with that movie. That movie had just compound problems over and over. And he was just one of many. And to me, Jared Leto almost got lost in that movie completely. I think he had 2 lines.
Well, yeah, he was in it was a cameo.
Yeah, and it was a waste. I actually thought, just while watching the trailer, that maybe they had some potential. There was a different kind of take, a different style, and I was willing to give it a shot. And I would never watch any Suicide Squad sequel or a Jared Leto Joker ever. But I had hope, and I liked him in the trailer. But that's as far as it went.
I will say I didn't hate Suicide Squad, but it's not. I mean, it's by no means a good movie. I think the biggest problem with it is the ending. it really falls apart at the very end.
It turns into Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it's Ghostbusters at the end.
I'm like, what? You know, it was so. I don't like that movie. I think it's terrible.
Yeah, I don't either. But writing that one off as
well, yeah, you just got to talk
garbage.
about him because he's there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think the big problem was he was just sort of a crazy gangster. That's all. But anyway, the honorable mention I want to do is Mark Hamill as the Joker, specifically from the Arkham games.
Oh, yeah.
That is probably my very favorite Joker of all the Jokers. It's like they can do stuff with him in the CG form that you can't really do physically. Like he has the strange elongated head.
Mark Hamill's signature laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the Arkham games version of the Joker, which is kind of a continuation of what was done on the animated show, but kind of amped up to 11, because you had Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill reprising their roles from the TV show that they had done for several years. And I think
and
that
I will say
it's fantastic.
And I love his this is spoiler alert, but the game's been out for I don't know, probably 10 years. Arkham City, the Joker dies. He actually dies for real, and he has an amazing death scene. And but real quick is he's sick with some disease. Batman has a cure. The Joker, Batman's debating on whether he's going to give the Joker the cure. The Joker jumps up behind him, makes Batman drop it, busts the cure all over the floor. So as the Joker's laying there laughing, or as he's laying there dying, Batman goes, the funny thing is I would have given you the cure. And Joker starts laughing, and he goes, that is a good one. And then he dies. And I think that's the best death scene you could ever have for the Joker. So anyway, okay. Well, I think we've rammed enough. But
we rammed enough Joker down your throat.
So thank you guys for joining me.
I'm almost
on that.
I'm almost hesitant to get to the main segment here.
Yeah, let's put it off as long as possible.
I'm exhausted.
Okay, so let's just stretch this out some more. I haven't seen Joaquin Phoenix's movie, but
okay.
Anyway, so let's.
No, let's do it. Let's get it over with. Rip off the Band-Aid.
Here we go.
Retroactive, rewind, review.
Zardoz speaks to you. His chosen ones, the gun is good. Go forth and kill.
Okay.
Where do you even start?
All right. Well, I tell you what. The one thing I wanted to start.
You start with a floating head on your screen.
No. The screensaver. The movie opens up with his head that's bopping around on your screen. It looks like a screensaver.
Like a screensaver, yes.
Like that episode of The Office where they're watching the square and they're seeing if it's going to hit the corner perfectly.
Yeah. Which everyone did.
I think the thing I wanted to ask you guys, do you, after watching, we just watched the movie, do either of you have a clue as to what the story was?
I know exactly what the story was.
Okay, because I think I have an idea what the story is.
I know exactly what the story was.
Okay,
so and it should have just been told in 5 minutes and then turn off the show.
Okay, so like from a metaphorical level what it was trying to say.
I know exactly what the whole plot of the whole movie was.
That's great.
I got it crystal clear.
Okay. Well, don't keep it to yourself.
All right.
What is it?
All right. Well, first off, let's talk about what Mike was just saying. You have Niall Buggy, who played Arthur Frayne, or Zardoz.
Well, real quick, quick tidbit.
What?
It was originally John Borman was really originally trying to adapt The Lord of the Rings, and the studio wouldn't let him give him the money to do it, so he made this thing.
Okay, and to that point, listen, this is John Borman's hot off the heels of Deliverance. Okay?
Oh man, that's another thing too. Deliverance is an amazing movie.
Well, listen, he has a catalog. Listen, Deliverance, Excalibur. He did Hope and Glory, which I loved. Hope and Glory.
I never saw that.
Great movie.
His Exorcist.
But in the middle of this is Zardoz, and it's such a oh my god.
Okay,
so Zardoz. Zardoz is about a futuristic post-apocalyptic world that has several casts of people. You have the Brutals. You have the Exterminators, who are in charge of killing the Brutals. You have the Eternals, which are an immortal set of humans that are put in charge of protecting and passing on all of humanity's knowledge and achievements, et cetera, et cetera. They're the stewards of this.
And are for some reason immortal.
And they've become immortal, correct. You have the Renegades, which I'll talk about later. And then you have the Apathetics, which are we'll get to those subgroups later.
What do they call the old people?
The Renegades.
The Renegades.
No, we'll get to those later. But
the old people were Renegades?
Yeah, they were called the Renegades.
Oh, so stupid. So listen, the premise. You want me to give the whole plot away right now? I'll give the whole plot away. Okay.
Yeah, but don't spend too much time.
I'm not. It won't take that long. So Zardoz is a living god that the Brutals and the Exterminators worship. They're on the Outlands part of the world, whatever world we're talking about. And Zardoz himself is the character Arthur Frayne, and Arthur Frayne is an Eternal, so he's immortal, and he has been stewarding the Outland as Zardoz for many, many years. We're supposed to assume it's been hundreds of years, many generations. And what
he's been breeding people.
And what he does is exactly
takes
right.
Place in 2293.
Right. He has identified families and genetics in the Brutals and the Exterminators that he then picks and chooses who's allowed to breed, and he then breeds. What he's trying to do is he's trying to breed a superhuman he can then insert into the Eternals world, which are the vortexes, and this superhuman will be immune to the Eternals' powers and upturn the entire world and basically force the Eternals to evolve or die, which is to them a blessing if they can die.
Yeah, because the Eternals are like the untouched upper class.
Right. They're completely bouged out. They are completely out of touch, and they are bored with eternity. That's what has become. That's the problem of the Eternals. They're bored with their lives. They're bored with everything they do. So
almost
they look
like I'm
for
bored with
reasons
this
to.
synopsis.
I know, but that's the whole thing, and that's exactly what happens. Zed, our main character, or Sean Connery,
and no name is more heroic. Zed.
Zed is the one who jumps on inside the Zardoz stone floating head and comes back to the vortexes and creates all this havoc. And that's the story.
Man.
Real quick, I want to before we go any further, I just want to make a note that normally on this we try to keep the topics for a general audience, but there are some things
they need to know what they're getting into.
There's some things in this story that we will be discussing that are a little risque. So just be warned. We just want to warn you. We're going to be not in a vulgar fashion, but
well.
Also, this movie had a lot of breasts.
Boobs everywhere for no reason.
Lots and lots of breasts. Apparently, the Eternals did not feel the need to wear shirts.
Jared, you and I briefly offline were talking about this time period of movies. This, to me, you know what this reminds me of a lot of? This reminds me of Logan's Run. This came off the tail of the 60s, the hippie commune kind of philosophy. And you see a lot of that in Logan's Run, and you see a lot of that in this kind of movie. Though I have to tell you, I think John Borman was onto something with this movie. I'm going to give him a little bit of credit. The problem was...
You mean on something?
Yeah, he was on something too. But the problem was, is like, you watch this movie, and I said this last night when I was watching this to you guys, but this is how it felt. It felt like a film school student was at the end of his plasma run, selling plasma to fund his passion project. It just never felt like it was a legitimate movie. It just felt like an art project that just wasn't finished.
Well, You know, it has that look of...
It's an ugly movie.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, it was photographed by Jeffrey Unsworth, who did Superman.
He did 2001 also.
He must have been phoning it in, man.
Well, but it has that look of most late 60s, early 70s sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
That just, there's something indescribable. I mean, it's hard for me to put it into words, but you know it when you see it. You know what I'm saying?
Should we talk about, real quick, Zed's outfit?
Yeah, the worst costume in movie history.
Everyone who's listening, you may not know what you saw, but you've seen this picture of Sean Connery in the red bandolier G-string.
Yes. It's, man, I don't, it's like...
What kind of mustache is that? What's that called that he had? There's a word for it. Mustachio or something like that.
So Sean Connery's wearing a hairpiece and with a ponytail in it. He's got a mustache. Does he have a beard? No, just a mustache.
No, just a lot of hair.
And he seems
unbelievably hairy chest.
Yeah, his fellow renegades also had pretty much the same look as him.
They all look like they're middle-aged, like spaghetti western stars.
Yeah. You know, and Sean, at this point in his life, was... I'm not sure how old he was. I mean, he wasn't... I wouldn't call him svelte. He's... This poor man's running around in red tighty-whities with a He-Man sash over... And, you know, he's not full-on dad bod, but he's getting there at this point.
And to backstory Sean Connery, this was when he was having a little bit of trouble finding work after his 007 days, and he took this job for a substantial cut in what he was normally paid. I think he was paid like $200,000 for this movie. And he did a lot of like very frugal cutbacks to get this movie made.
Get this, he was 44 when he made Zardoz.
Oh my, he was 44?
He's younger than me and you.
He's my age right now.
He's me and Matt's age.
Boy, I tell you, I feel better about myself. God, I would have put him much older than 44.
Yeah, he does. He looks like he's pushing. I mean, he's in his mid-50s.
Yeah, easy.
But
well, you know, I think when the movie really takes I think when you have that moment where you're like I mean, because you know you watch it and you're trying to like hang in there with it. You're trying to figure out what the story is. You're trying to figure out where it's going, and you have that feeling like like when he shoots the dude and he just floats out.
Yeah, he floats out of the head.
He floats out of the head and just floats away.
Sean Connery does not utter a word of dialogue until 15 minutes and 20 seconds into the movie. Because I was like, he's not talking. What the heck's going on here?
What about the scene where they're trying to elicit to
give him to make him
okay,
aroused?
hold that thought.
Chub.
So, hold that thought. So, to go to the beginning of the movie, the giant stone head of Zardoz, which is now preaching to the exterminators,
yes,
who are in charge of killing the brutals, as they call them, has a classic line where he says in his booming voice,
Zardoz speaks to you, his chosen ones. You have been raised up from brutality to kill the brutals who multiply, and are legion. To this end, Zardoz, your god, gave you the gift of the gun. The gun is good.
The gun is good!
The penis is evil. The penis shoots seeds and makes new life to poison the earth with a plague of men, as once it was. But the gun shoots death and purifies the earth of the filth of brutals. Go forth and kill. Zardoz has spoken.
As he's saying this, by the way, guns are spewing out of his mouth. And if you look, you see
He's
actual
vomiting
prop
guns.
hands throwing the guns out as they're hitting the camera and just disturbing everything. So, yes, that was the very first mega line of the movie. So the whole premise now is that you've got this whole culture of breeding is bad in the movie.
Yes. But I would like to say something about the head. You know, I think as an effect, it was actually sort of well done. I mean, it looks stupid because it was just a head, but I was looking, and there's no... that was done, I'm almost positive, all in camera somehow, because there's no... In movies of that vintage, you see...
Matte lines?
When there's a lot of optical noise from the multiple times you run film through a printer at that point. But it was
that was the beginning of the movie where the effects crew thought that they still thought they might actually be making a good movie.
No, that's when they had whatever budget they had. That's what they shot their wad on their first scene.
So I'm, small kudos to whoever. But I was looking for it.
Not to delve too much into subplots of this ridiculous movie, but when Zed is brought into this society, he encounters two women. He encounters May and he encounters Consuela. Which is, by the way, the naming of these characters is just brilliant. Zed, May, Consuela. We'll introduce Friend to you shortly. But these two women are at diametrical odds against what they should be doing with this savage person, Zed, from the Outland. And Consuela wants to kill him, and May wants to keep him and study him and find out what makes him tick. And then, for some reason, he gets saddled up with this guy named Friend, whom I don't even know where to begin with.
Paul McCartney.
Like Paul McCartney.
He looked like Paul McCartney, yeah. and Friend is a boisterous yet under the surface disgruntled Eternal whom is just sick of his own existence and sick of the Eternal's existence, and whom we find out later was in cohorts with Arthur Frayne or Zardoz to assist in this breeding program to get the superhuman Zed involved. And by the way, every time this guy is on screen, and I have to make this point before I forget, every time Friend is on screen, he has incredibly bad ADR. All right? All his lines are so poorly looped, his mouth never matches up with what he's saying. And what made me laugh was they used ADR in all the wrong places. And then at the very end of the movie, when you have the exterminators in the vortexes killing everybody, they're wearing their masks and they're shouting natural audio through their masks. It was Zed going, Zed, Zed. You're thinking, if there was ever a part to ADR, it's that, where this actor with a giant 80-pound mask over his head is trying to yell through his mask his line. But they choose to ADR the guy who's just early in the movie. Terrible, terrible choices in the movie. Had to get that off my chest.
Well, talking about terrible choices, I'm going to go back to the moment where you knew you were in for just complete ridiculousness.
Where the credits rolled in the beginning?
It's the scene where they're trying to arouse Sean Connery.
Zed?
That's the scene where they're all showing him these images of breasts, and they're all just staring
and
at
naked
his
mud wrestlers.
At his, they're staring at his area.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out what causes that to happen.
And which woman is it that elicits the?
It's Consuela.
Okay, she walks in and then
to the amusement of the others. By the way,
yeah,
they thought this was quite funny.
Yeah, the porn didn't do it, but her standing in front of him aroused him.
Yeah, he was like, yes, yes.
So this movie continues in its ridiculousness, where Friend is taking Zed to the different parts of their inner world, and they land at one point at this, it looks like an amusement park, where the way it works is if you break a rule in the Eternals plan, if you break a rule, if you are against something, you are aged as a punishment. So you get 5 years for a misdemeanor, you get 3 months, it doesn't matter. And they fight the aging. They don't want to age. So they wind up at this amusement park full of old people in formal dinnerware and formal dining wear, three-piece suits.
All of whom have dementia.
They're all senile, and these are called the quote renegades.
Renegades.
These are the ones that broke all the rules, so they were forced to be aged.
But they can't kill them.
Well, also, it wasn't just them. They were also the who were the people? The Eternals. What are they called? The Eternals.
The Eternals.
The Eternals.
They were the descendants of the renegades, who. But they went. But here's a part of the story that makes. I mean, like this, it doesn't make any sense anyway. But the part that really doesn't make any sense is these people had gone to space.
Yes.
Yes.
And then when they came back, I don't know, something happened.
No,
I mean,
nothing
and
happened.
it's like that. It's like that classic, like, you know, the youth against the adults, I guess. So the youth take over, and they put the old people in the circus.
But why?
place.
Why? And Friend goes against everybody.
And only half his face ages.
We'll talk about what happens when Friend refuses to go to level 2 in a second here. But Friend becomes one of these renegades later, and when he is aged, he is forced again to... when you're aged and you get put in this retirement home, you are forced to wear 3-piece formal dining suits. I don't understand. This is what happens to the renegades. They're forced to wear really formal black tie things everywhere they go, and they have it's like permanent dinner theater.
It was almost like a scene from The Walking Dead. They went to a ballroom that had been attacked by zombies, and everyone in there was wearing their tuxedos and stuff like that.
This whole time, Consuela is against Zed the entire time. May is doing her best to study, and May actually uncovers the secret that he is a genetic superhuman and that he can destroy them all.
I thought Consuela was the one who figured
No, May figured that out. But Consuela
when does it happen when everybody becomes awake by licking each other's fingers?
Hold on, we'll get to that.
Oh,
That was
okay.
awful.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
Oh, hold on. So the funny thing is that Consuela spends the entire movie after Zed trying to get rid of him and kill him. And then when the riots have happened and Zed has created a cultural awakening within the group, and everybody is reverting back to their savage, more primal kind of instincts, Consuela is leading the charge to get him. And when she finally finds him, he looks at her, and she then instantly falls in love with him, and then starts to defend him, and is the love of his life. And it makes no sense.
And they live in a cave and have a kid, and the kid leaves.
Yeah, that's so strange.
And they turn into skeletons holding hands.
I think they were supposed to be kind of like Adam and Eve. But that doesn't even make sense because there was a group of people who left to start a society.
No, it's
so
just stupid. But to Mike, to your point, there was a subsect even from the Renegades and the Eternals called the Apathetics, which I guess these are people who have become so bored with their life that they go into almost a self-induced like coma.
Yeah, they're catatonic.
Until they encounter Zed and start to lick his sweat.
Well, first he tries to rape one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
He goes to town under that girl's blouse. He's just like...
And his friend is like, sure, help yourself.
But then they start licking his sweat, and they all start becoming almost like... Well, they become like zombies themselves, and they are then sucking the life from him. And just as he's about to die,
gosh, that's right. When they
he
all make
eats
out.
some leaf woman gave him, and he instantly springs up and runs out of the room. And that's the last. And then cut scene to him crawling in the dirt at nighttime with the old renegades tackling him. It's literally the worst cutscene you've ever seen in your life.
I think too, when we talk about the movie, you have to understand that each scene is shot in a completely confusing manner that you can't track anything that's going on. And people are just doing weird things. Like, it's not like people could sit there and have a conversation. They have to like that whole scene where they're all waving their hands at Friend.
Yes.
And
like going, oh, gosh.
So they vote through their psychic connection.
Yeah, but they do those weird hand motions too, which I think are
terrible.
They all have a commune lunch, which is the commune factor coming back in this time period movie. And for some reason, this is where Friend wants to rebel against this group, and he won't commune with them. And he's like, no, I won't go to level 2. I'm not going to do it.
I will not go to second level. No.
And what about the scene where he walks in
and they make him an
where
old
they're
person?
where they're in the kitchen and he starts going and they laugh and he goes and they laugh some more
I'm
like he's
playing
told
that
some
clip. I'm gonna play it
funny
right
joke.
Now. I'm gonna play it right now.
One scene I made note of was when he's learning by osmosis, it turns into a 10-minute opening of a James Bond movie.
Oh, except you see the breasts.
Yeah, but
they're projecting images on topless women.
Yes,
and waving their hands over him,
and topless Sean Connery as well.
Yeah, and he's absorbing all this information that I have no idea what use it could possibly benefit.
The sequence goes on a long time.
You talked about that sequence, and you have to remember the one towards the end of the movie. Every Eternal has a crystal that's implanted in their forehead, which is then connecting them to the tabernacle, which is this crystal that Sean Connery gets his hand on. He then mentally gets transported basically into the tabernacle, and they spent 8 minutes with him in a funhouse room with nothing but mirrors, running around with no dialogue, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
It was 8 minutes of him running around.
Was it really 8 minutes?
Yeah, it was just under 8 minutes.
Dozing off.
He just running around to different mirrors and
it was
sequences.
like Enter the Dragon, except not as interesting.
It's just funny to me. You know, the premise had potential. The movie just sucked.
I don't even know if the premise. I mean, because it was so. The story could be told in like 30 minutes, and it got stretched out by these. Like, remember the scene where he falls in the pyramid? I mean, it looks straight up like whenever somebody pretends like they walk down steps behind something.
That's what it looked like.
It looked like that. Like he all of a sudden he just like flails his arms up and he makes this face and he falls behind this pyramid, which is clearly just a little pyramid sitting there.
It's just this little set piece.
I mean, it looks like straight up Land of the Lost type of thing.
The pylon that they go.
It looked like a rehearsal of the scene that stayed in the movie. Okay, Sean. So pretend like you're gonna fall. Okay. So yeah, that'll be where you pretend like you fall right there, and then and now you're out of frame, so that'll work. All right, next scene.
Are you sure you want me to do another take? No, that one take was fine. Are you sure?
You nailed it. Nailed it.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna put a question out there, and I want you to think about it. Why was the movie called Zardoz?
Well, it was supposed to be because of the Frank Baum book.
Because of The Wizard of Oz, which you find out is where he got his name from in the movie.
It was like the man behind the curtain. I guess that was the symbolism.
Yeah, and I get that, but it was such a it was such a minor part of the movie, really.
No, it makes no sense. Like, why, what normal person would be like, let's see, Zardoz. Okay, I'm looking at Wizard of Oz. And okay, wait, if I take the W-I off and I take the of off, it's Zardoz!
In the movie, what happens is Zed, in his quest in the Outland to exterminate the Brutals, discovers a library where he teaches himself to read, and one of the books that is his great epiphany is The Wizard of Oz.
It's a trick! A trick!
What was the trick? Tell me.
Zardoz said, stop. He said, no more.
No more what?
No more killing.
He told you to take prisoners.
Yes.
To make slaves.
Yes.
To cultivate instead of kill.
Yes.
To grow wheat.
Yes.
Did you need wheat?
No. We ate meat. Zardoz betrayed us. We were hunters, not farmers.
And as he reads it, he realizes that this is what his life is that Zardoz is just like the Wizard of Oz. He's the man behind the curtain, and that's why he jumped in the big stone head head and went back to the board. It doesn't
Okay,
work.
here's another question. What was up with the people in the plastic wrappers?
Inside the head?
The Ziploc people?
And inside the pyramid?
Yeah. Or I'm talking about inside the head. So he's flying around with these people in, like, is it like, well, I need a person. I'll just take one out of the wrapper. I mean, what was, like...
Well, by the way, if you watch that again, I caught this at the very last scene where he's up close to some of them. The scene has been going on for like 30, 40 seconds, without a cut. And then he runs away. You see the woman in the absolute foreground, her chest start to like super heave as I think she's suffocating in this plastic saran wrap on set. And if you don't believe me, go back and watch it. Like you see her start to like freak out just as they cut.
Oh God!
Because they're in this giant saran wrap.
That's what I was thinking too when I was watching. I'm like, how are these people breathing?
I'm telling you, watch the movie. One woman is freaking out right before they cut.
One scene to me, well, there are many, but one that stood out as completely ridiculous is when they're trying to encase Zed in his own Ziploc bag, and he
punches through it.
He dramatically slow motion punches out of the plastic.
It's indestructible.
No! It can't be done!
No!
That's the big moment where you're supposed to believe him as a superhuman. He breaks through a plastic
that he breaks
bag.
through a plastic sheet.
Well, here's another thing too about the movie, and I think it kind of like adds to the difficulty of finding any enjoyment in it at all, even as like camp. It's a really ugly movie. Like it's just ugly, and especially when there's the scenes where they're like just murdering people. The people, I guess they're the humans from Planet of the Apes, and he starts to sexually assault that one woman in the water. And it's really just an unpleasant movie to look at.
I agree.
Which, I mean, like, again, it goes back to, I mean, John Borman has made some good movies.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is not one of them.
I guess this was a passion project. I mean, he wrote it, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he wrote it.
Man.
Could you imagine the studio getting this thing when it's done?
It just be, I mean, what do they make of it? I mean, it wasn't it wasn't as terribly reviewed as you might think. I read some of the old reviews.
To that point, it's apparently gained quite a cult following. And growing up, I've seen, like most of you, have seen countless movies. And I've never encountered this one. Not once have I ever once stumbled upon Zardoz.
When I was a kid, I was flipping through the channels one night. And the first time I came upon this movie, it was the scene where he sees the face in the window and he goes in the library. And I watched up till when he discovers that Zardoz is Wizard of Oz. And I remember it fascinated me. I was like, wow, I want to see more. But I was a kid and I never saw it again. You know, because when you're a kid and you see if a movie came on a network, especially like 43 or something, chances are you were never going to see it again. And then I did rewatch it. I actually bought the DVD and watched it when I lived in Nashville. And what was funny is when we were talking about doing this new viewing, I couldn't believe how I just almost the thing I remembered the most was the part that I had seen originally when I was a kid. Like I still remember seeing that part, but I could hardly remember anything about the movie from the second time I'd watched it all the way through.
This movie had to have been available to put onto syndication or broadcasting, onto especially some of these cable networks, which in my opinion just says, it really shows how bad this movie really is, that even the low-end cable networks are like, no, I can't. Make Critters 5. Put on Critters 5. Don't put on this.
No, who's gonna pay? Who's gonna advertise on this thing?
Well, It's
but I've never seen it. And it's something that I remember seeing the picture of Sean Connery in this ridiculous outfit.
Yeah.
And I was going, what is Sean Connery doing? And I had a complete, I don't know what I thought. I don't know what images or conception I had in my mind about what this movie is going to be about, but it was nothing. My wildest dreams couldn't have drawn out this plot.
Yeah, the picture of Sean Connery in his skivvies. That's a picture I've seen for a long time, and so I knew I knew Zardoz was this movie from the 70s that he was in. I had never seen it, never really had a desire to, until we started talking about what we were going to do on the show, and I was like, okay, well let's knock this out, and it was miserable.
Well, the thing about a cult movie is it's a movie that, even though it's bad, you can rewatch. And this movie, to me, is just, it's unwatchable. It's boring. I mean, it's just boring. And it's one of those movies that I was afraid my wife was going to walk in the room while I was watching it. And I was going to have to try to explain what this was. What are you watching? Well, I'm just watching it for our podcast.
Well, you have to admit. Now, both of you have seen Excalibur, and Excalibur is an art project on its own, just with a heck of a budget.
But it's awesome.
It is awesome, but I can see glimpses of how Excalibur was shot. I can see glimpses of how it was through this movie. I can see him perfecting in Excalibur.
Well, I think we've dedicated enough time to this.
It's over an hour.
Hey, listen, this is the last time I ever intend in my life to talk about Zardoz. So, and listen, everybody, much like Looper, one of Mike's favorite movies, we are probably, and as you listen to this is probably the only Zardoz conversation happening in the entire world right now. So,
I don't know.
Relish it.
It was Looker.
Was it Looker or Looper?
Yeah, I was about to say Looper is a good movie.
Looker?
Looker.
Oh, Looker. The Looker. The Looker gun. Yeah.
Hey, you know what?
What?
That's what we need to watch for the next one.
You want to do Looker? These are all the movies you've seen. We got to pick some movies that we haven't seen.
Okay, fine. But I'm just saying.
All right. Well, if you're still listening to the show, God bless you, and I'm sorry. But this is a segment we're going to try to keep going. Try being the operative word. If we have the endurance and stamina for it.
I think next time we'll pick a movie that we'll recommend, hopefully.
Yeah.
To the
okay,
audience.
so we're going around the table here. What grade do you give Zardoz, Matt?
Oof.
Grade it like a report card.
I'm not going to give it an F. I'm going to give it a D+.
Mike?
Oh, man. This one gets a U. Unsatisfactory.
Oh, U, huh? Okay. Yeah, I'm
Dude, they
solid.
don't even give those anymore.
They don't give Fs?
No, U's. They don't give U's anymore.
Oh, U's. Okay. Well, I'm going straight up F. F this movie. So, Zardoz. Well, Sean, you're very old now. You're probably in the renegade home. Very sorry that this happened to you. But at least you gave us, Bond and Dr. Henry Jones. So thank you for that. Anyway, I think we need to probably wrap this up.
Hey, listen, once again, it's always a bumpy ride with the hyperspace, but hang on tight. We'll make it through this together.
All right. You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to The Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.
Zardoz has spoken.